You're watching Freedom, it's our time. I'm Mikhail Baranov in the studio, and now for the main news at the midpoint of the week. Hello. 5 people were injured as a result of Russian attacks on the Zaporizhia region. In the past 24 hours, the Russians carried out more than 600 strikes on 19 settlements in the region. They used aircraft, drones, and also shelled peaceful towns and villages with artillery. A power facility was attacked by Russian drones in a border community of the Chernihiv district. This was reported by the regional military administration. A fire broke out at the site of the strike, but it has already been extinguished, and energy workers are working to restore the damaged facility. There are also consequences from Russian drone attacks in other districts. In Nizhyn district, a strike hit transport infrastructure, and in Koryokivka district, drone debris damaged a residential house and a car. 1 person was killed and 8 others were injured. The day before, the Russian army attacked Kamiansk in the Dnipropetrovsk region. One of the drones hit the roof of a residential building. The structure collapsed from the 4th to the 1st floor. 5 people were trapped under the rubble. Rescuers managed to free them. The city's railway station was also damaged, which led to changes in the train schedule. More details about the attack are in our next report.
This is the moment a Russian drone struck a residential building in Kamiansk, Dnipropetrovsk region. The apartments were instantly engulfed in flames.
The Shahid drone pierced the roof and got stuck in the building on the 4th floor. The building literally started burning. Within 5, maybe 7 minutes at most, there was a detonation and the collapse happened from the 4th floor down to the 1st.
Vladislav and his wife were in a shelter at the time of the attack, and later, from the street, they saw their home burning.
The strike hit right through my wall. My apartment is ruined, no windows left. The most important thing is that we're alive.
5 people ended up trapped under the rubble of this 5-story building. They were rescued. Residents of Kamiansk say that during the night, they heard a series of explosions, one after another.
2 really terrifying ones. There was one explosion, then another, and then the fire. It's a nightmare. God forbid anyone goes through this.
After the overnight attack by the Russian army, efforts to deal with the aftermath continue in Kamiansk. Residential buildings, cars, and commercial properties were damaged. The railway station was also hit. Some train services are delayed. Ksenia Sitinskaya, Natalia Gusak, and Vladimir Stangelov reporting for Freedom TV channel.
Night on Thursday, Russia once again attacked the railway infrastructure in the frontline regions, according to Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister for Restoration and Minister for Communities and Territories Development, Oleksiy Kuleba. In the Kharkiv region, Russia tried to cut off connections with the eastern part of the country. Trains were rerouted to alternative routes, and in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the strikes targeted energy infrastructure, the railway, and one of the stations. Due to the damage in the Donetsk and Zaporizhia directions, trains are running several hours late. Russia launched 135 drones at Ukraine on Thursday night. About 90 of them were Shahids, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. Ukrainian air defenders neutralized 108 Russian drones in the north, south, and east of the country. Hits were recorded at 13 locations. The sounds of powerful explosions were heard last night in Donetsk, which is temporarily occupied by Russia. Local social media channels reported an alleged missile strike, as well as a hit near the city on a warehouse storing ammunition belonging to the Russian occupiers. Detonation began at the site of the strike, and residents were even urged not to approach their windows. The strike on Donetsk was also confirmed by the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, who clarified that there, a storage and launch base for Shahid-type UAVs was hit. According to the Ukrainian command, the defense forces also struck the Volgograd oil refinery. The plant's annual oil processing volume is about 16 million tons. That's almost 6% of all oil processing in Russia. Explosions and a fire were reported in the target area. In addition, the armed forces attacked 3 oil facilities in temporarily occupied Crimea.
The defense forces are consistently carrying out a set of measures to strike critical elements of the military-industrial infrastructure of the aggressor state, both on its own territory and in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, in order to deprive the enemy of offensive capabilities and the ability to continue its aggression. From a statement by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
Another 1,170 Russian occupiers were eliminated by Ukraine's defense forces at the front. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russia's total combat losses since the start of the full-scale war have already exceeded 1,147,000 soldiers. In addition, yesterday 6 Russian armored combat vehicles, 15 artillery systems, 172 operational tactical level drones, and 84 units of automotive equipment were destroyed. The number of combat clashes on the front is increasing. In the past 24 hours, 276 such incidents were recorded. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the hottest spot is the Pokrovsk direction. In that area alone, Russian troops made 100 attempts to storm the positions of the defense forces. On the Alexandrovsky bridgehead, Ukrainian defenders repelled 31 attacks, and on the Konstantinovsky bridgehead, 35. In the Kupiansk area, the occupying forces launched assaults 7 times. In the southern Slobozansky direction, particularly in the Volchansk area, the armed forces of Ukraine stopped 14 enemy offensives. Latvia has provided Ukraine with another 21 Patria armored personnel carriers. A handover took place at the Adatsy military base, according to Ukraine's Minister of Defense Denis Shmyhal, who was on a working visit to Latvia. He noted that the armored vehicles will immediately be put into service with the Special Operations Forces. In total, Kiev has received all 42 promised armored vehicles from Riga this year. In addition, the Latvians have delivered another 12 combat reconnaissance vehicles. Shmyhal also thanked Latvia for an additional contribution of €2.2 million to the Pearl Initiative and for financial assistance to the Shelter Coalition. Russia will remain a threat to Europe and the world even after the war against Ukraine ends, according to NATO chief Mark Rutte. At the Alliance Forum in Bucharest, he emphasized the need to strengthen pan-European security and called on all countries to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP.
We need capabilities, we need equipment, real firepower, and of course, the most advanced technologies. Because the threats we face are real and long-term. Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine is the most obvious example of this threat. But the danger posed by Russia will not disappear with the end of this war. For the foreseeable future, Russia will remain a destabilizing force in Europe and the world.
The European Union wants to create a drone alliance with Ukraine. These plans were announced today by the European Commissioner for Defense, Andrius Kubilius. He emphasized that Russian drones are routinely violating the airspace of EU countries and pose a threat to all states, regardless of how far they are from Russia. Kubilius stressed that now not only can Europe help Ukraine, but Ukrainians can also share important experience and technological achievements. The European Commissioner believes that Ukraine, as well as some other European countries that are not part of the European Union, should be included in the Common Defense Plan.
If our intelligence services suspect that Putin might test us, and Article 5 of NATO, within the next 3 to 5 years, then we need to understand that we will be tested by a battle-hardened Russian army. They have the ability to use millions of drones and so on. On our side, there is also another battle-tested army, the Ukrainian one, with its own industry and capabilities. The question is how we can integrate Ukraine's capabilities with ours to create a stronger European defense. There are a lot of ideas. I think of the European Defense Union as a kind of mechanism that will help us strengthen our power.
The Kremlin continues to undermine all diplomatic efforts to end the war and does not stop attacking Ukraine's critical infrastructure, which provides people with a normal, peaceful life. President Volodymyr Zelensky said this while commenting on yet another round of strikes by the aggressor country on peaceful Ukrainian cities. He called on partners to increase pressure on Moscow in order to finally force it to make peace.
The fact that the Russians continue to strike at energy infrastructure and civilians shows that the current pressure is not enough. It is very important that America, Europe, and the G7 continue their sanctions and tariff work regarding Russian energy trade and finances. And Moscow must finally realize how serious Europe is about self-defense. It's time to make a decision regarding Russia's frozen assets. The political will is already there, and we are counting on the prompt implementation of a technical solution. It is absolutely fair that the aggressor's money should be used to defend against the war. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
It is still possible for U.S. President Donald Trump to force Putin to sit down at the negotiating table. This opinion was expressed by the UK Defense Secretary John Healey. He also emphasized that Kiev's partners from the coalition of the willing are constantly updating their joint strategy to ensure peace in Ukraine after the end of hostilities.
President Trump is the figure who can bring Putin to the negotiating table and potentially put an end to the war. We are constantly updating our joint efforts to be ready to help secure peace when the right moment comes. John Healey, UK Defense Secretary, in a comment to Politico.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said that Putin personally asked him to help end the war against Ukraine, a war that the Russian dictator himself started and supposedly has been unable to end for over 10 years. The head of the White House spoke about this at a business forum in Miami. Trump noted that he had already managed to resolve similar issues before.
I spoke with Putin 2 weeks ago, and he told me, "We've been trying to resolve the war for 10 years, but we still haven't succeeded. Now it's up to you to settle this." I used to resolve issues like this in an hour, without any help from the UN.
Zelensky and Putin could meet at the G20 summit in South Africa, which will take place on November 21st through 22nd. This suggestion was made by Finnish President Alexander Stubb. There in Johannesburg, he also proposed holding a new meeting between Putin and Trump. Let me remind you, in September the U.S. leader said he does not plan to attend the G20 summit in Africa, and that instead, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance should go. Putin's press secretary, Peskov, also previously stated that the Kremlin chief does not intend to travel to South Africa in person. He did not say who would represent Russia at the summit.
Finland's position regarding the war in Ukraine remains unchanged. It is necessary to increase military and economic pressure on Russia in order to force Putin to come to the negotiating table. Such an opportunity may arise at the end of this month in South Africa. If everything goes according to plan over the next 2 or 3 weeks, the G20 summit in Johannesburg may become the meeting place for Zelensky and Putin.
The United States recently conducted a test of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, which is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. The launch was carried out from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. According to the base command, the goal was to test the reliability, combat readiness, and accuracy of the system. It is reported that the missile's warhead traveled about 6,750 kilometers and reached the test range in the Marshall Islands. For some reason, the American ballistic missile test greatly outraged the Kremlin. The head of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Andrei Belousov, immediately suggested to the Russian dictator to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. Putin didn't think long and gave the order to proceed, but not with the tests themselves, just with their preparation for now. At the same time, Putin made a reservation, claiming that this was supposedly his own directive. Is a retaliatory move in response to the United States' plans to conduct their own tests. The European Union is calling on Russia to refrain from nuclear threats and nuclear weapons testing. This was stated at a briefing in Brussels by the EU Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Anwar El-Anouni, while commenting on Moscow's plans to prepare for nuclear tests. The spokesperson emphasized that Russia must comply with its international obligations, including the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Together with the leaders of the 5 nuclear powers, Russia has signed and reaffirmed the principle that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. The EU strongly urges Russia to refrain from nuclear threats and calls on all parties to avoid actions that could provoke a new arms race, as such behavior undermines global stability and the hard-won progress in nuclear arms reduction. Since the end of the Cold War,
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukrainian all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.